This is the brief on overcoming the A2 pronunciation wall. You know, even if your grammar and vocabulary are flawless, you might still sound kind of robotic, because mastering pronunciation isn't about perfecting individual dictionary words, it's really about finding the rhythm, flow, and music of the language. So, first, before we can change how we speak, we absolutely have to change how we hear, by breaking the acoustic filter. Since childhood, your brain automatically filters out foreign sounds and replaces them with familiar native ones. It's why you hear the long E in sheep instead of the short I in ship. It's literally like an aggressive smartphone autocorrect, changing the audio before you even consciously process it. The fix? Active listening, using minimal pairs to isolate those microscopic sound differences. Second, let's train that mouth with the golden rule of English flow. Consonant-to-vowel linking. Native speakers don't put spaces between words. They push an ending consonant right onto the starting vowel of the next word. So read it becomes read it. Pronouncing every single word separately is like clunking down a choppy staircase. But consonant-to-vowel linking turns your speech into a smooth, continuous river. Finally, we connect that flow to vocabulary using the schwa. This is a lazy sound, making up 30% of spoken English in unstressed syllables. So the O in today just becomes today. Now, why should we actively try to be lazy with our pronunciation? Well, crushing those weak syllables gives you the energy to punch the strong ones, creating that natural native heartbeat. True English fluency isn't a textbook reading, but a musical performance where you link your sounds to play the language's natural rhythm.
Welcome to Daily English Flow. Stay until the end for a special bonus tip. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Have you ever found yourself in this incredibly frustrating scenario where you're like standing there and you carefully construct this grammatically perfect English sentence in your head?
Oh, yeah. Like you're picking out the exact right vocabulary words, making sure everything is aligned.
Right, exactly. You check your verb tenses, you take a breath, and you speak the sentence out loud, and the person you're talking to just gives you this blank stare.
They do that little squint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
squint, and they say, "Sorry, can you repeat that?"
It is, it's just a crushing feeling,
Yeah.
especially when, objectively that the words you used were totally correct.
You did all the math right, but the results still somehow came out wrong.
Exactly. And it's not just the blank stares, is it? It's that feeling that your own mouth is actively fighting against you when you try to speak English.
Oh, man, yeah. Like your tongue is suddenly way too thick, or your jaw is completely locked up.
Right. And the words come out sounding flat or sort of robotic. You watch native speakers on YouTube effortlessly flowing through these sentences,
But then you record a voice note for a friend, listen back, and you're like, wait, is that really what I sound like?
If you are nodding along to this right now, I want you to take a deep breath because you are definitely not alone. And it's crucial to understand that this is not a vocabulary problem.
You've basically just hit what linguists call the A2 pronunciation wall.
Yes, the A2 wall.
So what does this all mean? Well, today's deep dive is built on a really comprehensive A2 pronunciation masterclass, and we are unpacking this exact wall.
Because, at the beginner level, like A1 pronunciation is basically just survival.
Right. You're just trying to make the sounds clear enough so people can, guess what word you're saying. You're pointing, gesturing, just hoping for the best.
But as you progress to that A2 level, the rules of the game just completely change. It's no longer about isolated dictionary perfect words.
It's all about flow, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about rhythm. It's the underlying music of the language. Native speakers do not speak in separate blocks.
No, they link everything together. They swallow weak sounds entirely, stretch out the important syllables, and literally sing their sentences using specific pitch melodies.
Yeah, and if you are still trying to pronounce every single word perfectly, one by one, you just end up sounding like a metronome.
And native speakers actually struggle to understand that because their brains aren't listening for individual words. They're listening for that rhythm.
Right, and if the rhythm is off, the brain just doesn't process the audio correctly.
Which brings us to our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into the mechanical truth about spoken English. But just to be absolutely clear up front, the goal here is not to erase your accent.
No, Not at all. Your accent is a beautiful part of your identity. It's your history, your story. We are definitely not trying to hide where you come from.
The goal is just to give you the precise mechanical tools to be 100% understood effortlessly by anyone in the world.
We are going to dissect your pronunciation across all the core language skills today.
Moving your spoken English from feeling choppy and, translated to clear, smooth, and natural. But ironically, to fix how we speak, we actually have to start by rewiring how we hear.
Because there's this absolute unbreakable law of accent improvement, which is you cannot pronounce a sound that you cannot physically hear.
Which sounds a bit obvious on the surface, right? But there's actually this massive biological barrier in the way. It's not just about paying better attention.
Right. It is a physiological reality. It's what we call the acoustic filter.
The acoustic filter.
Yeah. So in infancy, a human baby can hear and distinguish every single phonetic sound in every human language.
Wow.
But as you grow up, to save cognitive energy, your brain undergoes this process called neural pruning. It essentially wires itself to only hear the sounds of your native language.
So any sound that doesn't exist in your mother tongue is literally filtered out by your brain before it even reaches your conscious awareness.
Exactly. And it gets replaced with the closest native sound you already have.
I always think of this like having a highly aggressive autocorrect feature on your smartphone, but like for your ears.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
Like if your native language doesn't have the short I sound, like in the word ship,
Yeah.
your brain doesn't just ignore it. It literally tricks you into hearing the long E sound in sheep.
Yeah, you aren't going deaf. Your brain is just auto-correcting the audio file before you even process it.
So to get past this A2 wall, we have to break that filter. Your listening goal has to fundamentally change. You aren't just listening for meaning anymore.
No, you have to start listening for the mechanics, the exact shape of the sounds, the length of the vowels, the subtle hitch variations.
But I have to ask, because the common advice you always see online is just immerse yourself. People say, like, if I just leave an English podcast or the news playing in the background while I wash the dishes or drive, my brain will eventually just soak it up by osmosis. Doesn't that break the filter over time?
What's fascinating here is that passive background listening is actually a trap.
Really? A trap?
Totally. The research completely debunks this idea. Having an English podcast playing for 2 hours while you're distracted with the dishes will not fix your acoustic filter.
Why not, though?
Because your brain is too comfortable. It will happily continue auto-correcting all that audio into your native sounds because that requires 0 extra calories.
Oh, right. Because it's just defaulting to what's easy.
Exactly. What you actually need is like 10 minutes of intense, active, hyper-focused listening. Quality over quantity. You have to force the brain to build new synapses.
Okay, let's unpack this. What does hyperfocused listening actually look like in practice? Because it can't just be staring really intensely at a speaker.
No, it's highly systematic.
Yeah.
There are 4 specific elite strategies we can pull from the masterclass. The first one is the minimal pair hunt.
Minimal pair, like words that differ by only one tiny sound.
Yes. Think bat versus bed, or full versus fool. You find audio of these pairs, close your eyes, and force your brain to isolate that microscopic difference.
Like, is the vowel held a millisecond longer? Is there a little puff of air on the consonant?
Exactly. You have to obsess over those tiny details to force your brain to create a brand new category for that specific sound.
Okay, so that's the first one. And the second strategy moves from individual sounds to rhythm, which they call the stress radar.
Right, because English is what linguists call a stress-timed language. Some syllables are loud, long, and high-pitched, while others are incredibly short and quiet.
So for the stress radar, you stop focusing on vocabulary entirely, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
You listen to a native speaker, and you physically tap your finger on your desk every single time you hear a heavy, stressed syllable.
I actually tried this one, and physically tapping is surprisingly difficult. Like, I want to go to the store to buy some bread. You tap on go, store, buy bread. But why does the physical tap matter so much?
Because you are engaging cross-modal reinforcement.
Cross-modal?
Yeah, by tying an auditory sound to a kinetic, physical movement, you are forcing the brain to recognize the timing. It's honestly like finding the heartbeat of the sentence.
I love that. And strategy 3 takes that a step further with the intonation map.
Right, visual mapping.
Yeah, you take a short audio clip of a native speaker, and you literally draw a line on a piece of paper following the pitch of their voice. The voice goes up, you draw the line up, Voice drops low, draw it down. You're visually mapping the music.
Which perfectly sets up the final listening strategy, which is the blind shadow. This is the bridge between the ears and the mouth.
How does that work?
You listen to a short, like, 3-word sentence, pause it, close your eyes and repeat it out loud. But you're trying to recreate the exact physical feeling of the sound.
Like, did your lips round? Did your voice vibrate in your chest?
Exactly. But here is where we run into another massive wall.
Right. Because say you've spent weeks doing minimal pairs and blind shadowing, your brain can finally hear the subtle differences in the vowels, but when you go to speak, you still sound robotic.
Yes, because hearing it is only half the battle. Your jaw muscles still don't actually know what to do.
Speaking isn't just a mental exercise, it is a physical education. Your mouth, your tongue, your lips, your jaw, they're complex muscle groups.
Very complex.
Yeah.
And they have spent your entire life moving in very specific, very comfortable patterns based on the motor pathways of your native language.
And English requires those muscles to move in completely new, often very awkward ways. Like if your jaw is too tight or your lips are too flat, your accent is going to remain heavy no matter how well you hear the difference.
We really have to start treating the mouth like a gymnasium.
A mouth gym. I love it.
Think about the physical gymnastics involved here. Take the jaw drop. English vowels, like the A in cat, require you to open your mouth much wider than many other languages do.
You have to deeply relax those jaw hinges.
Yes, and then there's aggressive lip rounding for, sounds like the W in water.
And of course, the dreaded tongue placements, the English TH and the R, they are notorious accent breakers for a really good reason.
Oh, absolutely.
For the TH, you physically must stick your tongue out between your teeth. When I first learned about this, it felt absurd. You literally feel like you're sticking your tongue out at the person you're talking to.
It feels incredibly silly to a lot of learners, yeah. But it is mechanically required to get that unvoiced air friction in a word like think, or the voiced vibration in this.
You can't just fake it by putting your tongue behind your teeth.
No, the physics of the airflow simply won't allow the sound to exist if you do that.
And the R is almost the opposite extreme, right? The tongue pulls way back into this tight ball in the middle of the mouth, never touching the roof, and you almost have to growl like a dog, like roared.
Yeah, but beyond just these individual sounds, there is a massive concept that unlocks the entire language.
The golden rule of flow.
Consonant-to-vowel linking. This is what unlocks that smooth native sound.
Because, as we established earlier, native speakers don't use spaces between their words.
Right. When a word ends in a consonant sound and the next word begins with a vowel sound, the speaker literally pushes the consonant over to become the start of the next word.
Okay, let's walk through an example of this because the mechanics are pretty wild. Let's take a sentence, I want to eat an apple. The robotic A1 way to say it is 6 separate blocks, right? I want to eat an apple.
But applying the golden rule, physically linking the ending consonants to the beginning vowels, it becomes, I want to eat an apple.
Wait, eat an apple. Let me try that. Eat an apple. That feels incredibly awkward. My tongue naturally wants to put a hard stop right after eat.
I know.
I feel like I'm slurring my words together and just speaking nonsense.
You feel like you're slurring because you are bypassing the rigid boundaries your native language taught you. But to a native English ear, eat an apple sounds perfectly crisp.
So if your jaw is aching and you feel a little ridiculous pushing that in onto apple, that's a good thing.
It is actually a sign of progress. It means you are breaking a lifetime of old muscle memory and building new neurological motor pathways.
So if someone is sitting in their bedroom right now, trying to push these consonants into vowels, how do they actually train those new muscles? Because just repeating sentences feels like you're just guessing.
You need specific isolation drills to force the physical adaptation. And the first one is the mirror drill, which is pure visual feedback.
So you literally watch your mouth in a mirror?
Yes. You have to ensure your lips are actually rounding for that W, or your tongue is visibly breaking the plane of your teeth for the TH. Your brain will lie to you and tell you you're doing it right, but the mirror won't.
The second drill sounds a bit bizarre, honestly. The pen and mouth technique. You take a clean pen, hold it horizontally between your teeth, bite down lightly, and then try to read a paragraph out loud.
It sounds weird, but it's essentially resistance training for your face. By clamping your jaw shut on the pen, Your tongue and your lips have to work twice as hard to articulate around that obstacle.
And then when you take the pen out 2 minutes later and read the paragraph again, your mouth just feels incredibly light and your articulation is amazingly crisp. It's like a baseball player swinging a heavy-weighted bat before stepping up to the actual plate. The regular bat feels like a feather afterward.
That's a great analogy. And the third drill isolates the mouth even further. It's the whisper drill. You just whisper a paragraph out loud.
Because by removing your vocal cords from the equation entirely, you remove pitch and volume, right?
Right. This forces your mouth to rely 100% on the sharp physical articulation of the consonants and vowels to actually be understood.
But here is the reality check with all of this. Trying to remember all of these physical mouth gymnastics, dropping your jaw, sticking your tongue out, linking consonants to vowels, trying to do all that in the middle of a fast-paced, real-time conversation is basically impossible.
The cognitive load is just way too high. Your brain simply does not have the processing power to simultaneously retrieve a complex vocabulary word, conjugate a past perfect verb, and physically stretch your jaw muscles correctly.
It's completely overwhelming.
Exactly. Which is why we need a bridge. We need a way to practice the physical movements without the pressure of spontaneous thought. And that bridge is reading and writing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because at first glance, reading and writing seem to have absolutely nothing to do with spoken pronunciation.
Right, they seem totally separate.
But at the A2 level, we use them to deliberately slow the brain down. We use them to map out the sounds before we ever try to speak them spontaneously.
Reading becomes essentially sheet music for the voice. You aren't reading to extract information anymore. You're reading purely to practice rhythm.
Because when people read silently, they tend to give equal time to every single word, and the danger is bringing that habit into spoken English, which results in a very flat, monotone voice.
To break that monotone habit, we use a strategy called text markup.
Right. You print a page of text, grab a pencil, and you underline the content words. The nouns, the main verbs, the adjectives. These are the loud notes, the words you will physically stretch out.
Then you put brackets around the function words. The pronouns, prepositions, articles. These are the quiet notes you'll crush down and say very quickly.
And finally, you physically draw a curved line between the words that link together.
So a sentence like, "The old man walked slowly down the dark street," becomes this visual map. You bracket the, you stretch old, you physically link it to man, so it becomes the old man. You start to see the loud notes and the fast runs mapped out before you even open your mouth.
And if your brain is still getting distracted by the meaning of the words, like if the cognitive load is still just too high, you use the gibberish read.
Yes, the gibberish read is brilliant.
You replace all the words in a sentence with da and da, but you keep the exact rhythm and stress.
By stripping away the actual vocabulary, you completely remove the cognitive burden of meaning. So, I'm going to the supermarket to buy some milk just becomes a rhythmic bounce.
Da 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 da.
Exactly. You can focus entirely on the physical stretch of those stressed syllables without worrying about pronouncing supermarket correctly.
And just as reading acts as sheet music, writing acts as your pronunciation laboratory, syllable mapping is a huge part of this because, let's face it, in English, spelling is famously chaotic.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Relying on spelling to dictate your rhythm is a massive trap.
It truly is. Take the word comfortable. If you look at the spelling, it looks like 4 distinct syllables, right? Comfortable.
But if you try to pronounce all 4, you sound highly unnatural. So you draw a syllable map. You literally draw 3 boxes. C-O-M-F, ter, bull.
You make the first box big and dark, and you physically clap your hands on the big box. C-O-M-F, ter, bull. You are training your brain to see the sound, not the letters.
And you can expand that to whole sentences using stage directions. Let's say you have a highly stressful phone call coming up in English. Write out your opening lines, but add visual cues.
Like drawing arrows above words for where your pitch should go up or down.
Right. Bold the words you need to stress. You're basically directing your own performance so you don't freeze and panic in the moment.
And a really crucial part of those stage directions is writing out the weak forms. Because in spoken English, small grammar words physically change their pronunciation depending on speed.
They do. To becomes to, for becomes fur, and becomes just an N sound.
So instead of writing out, I want to go for a walk, you write it out phonetically on your notepad as, I want to go for walk.
Yes. And by intentionally writing out that lazy connected pronunciation, you are actually giving your brain permission to accept that clear, native-sounding English is quite relaxed. It is not overly articulated.
Which is, honestly, the perfect entry point into understanding the specific linguistic secret that fills all those quiet, relaxed spaces. We know how to map out the loud and quiet words now, but what exactly is happening to the vowels in those quiet sections?
They're transforming into the schwa.
The schwa, the undisputed king of English sounds. A lot of people call it lazy, but I like to think of the schwa as the neutral gear in a manual transmission car.
I love that.
It is this relaxed central position your mouth constantly returns to so that it has the physical energy to shift up into the heavy, high-stress words.
That's a really brilliant way to conceptualize it. The schwa is represented phonetically by that little upside-down E, and it sounds like a very weak, breathy yeah, and it makes up roughly 30% of all spoken English. It's the absolute secret to natural vocabulary. If a non-native speaker tries to pronounce every single vowel in a multisyllable word perfectly, they completely destroy the word's internal rhythm.
Right, so the dictionary perfect robotic pronunciation of the word photograph would be PHO to graph, hitting the O and the A with full strength.
But the native pronunciation heavily relies on that neutral gear of the schwa for the unstressed syllables. It becomes PHO to graph, middle O just evaporates into a lazy ugh.
And the examples are endless. About becomes about. Memory becomes memory.
You must allow your mouth to default to that neutral gear on the unimportant syllables, but knowing where to put the heavy stress and where to use the schwa can be tricky.
Because English vocabulary actually shifts its shape based on how it's used, right?
Exactly.
Yes, the noun versus verb stress shift. This is such a classic A2 stumbling block. Many two-syllable words completely change their rhythm based on their grammatical role.
The general rule of thumb is that nouns carry the heavy stress on the first syllable, while verbs carry the stress on the second.
So a gift you give someone is a present, but the act of showing them something is to present.
A vinyl disc is a record, but the act of capturing audio is to record. Learning both shapes and practicing them back to back, like I will record the record, it builds incredible neurological flexibility.
There are also suffix rules that give you a roadmap. If a word ends in estoration, like information, or eke, like economic, the heavy stress always falls on the syllable directly before that suffix. Information, economic.
Once you understand the mechanism behind the rule, you stop guessing. Those intimidating long academic words suddenly become incredibly easy to balance.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture,
we see that all of this, the loud content words, the quiet schwas, the weak forms, it is all being dictated by one final overriding system, which is grammar.
which is funny because we usually think of grammar as just the boring math of the language, just the structural rules for building a correct sentence. But grammar is actually the music. The grammatical structure dictates the melody you have to sing.
Exactly. To illustrate this, let's use the telegram test. It perfectly reinforces the division between the heavy content words and the quiet function words we mapped out earlier.
I love this one. So imagine you lived 100 years ago and had to send a telegram and it cost you $5 for every single word. Your sentence is, I am going to the store to buy some milk. Which words are you actually willing to pay for?
You'd only keep the essential meaning, right? Going store, buy milk. Those are your content words. Your nouns, main verbs, adjectives, those are the words you punch with volume and length. The rest of the sentence, the I am, the sum, that's just cheap grammar glue holding the structure together. You crush the glue and punch the meaning.
And this is exactly why contractions are so vital. Textbooks often teach contractions like don't or won't as just informal street slang.
But mechanically, they are pronunciation necessities.
They really are.
They are strictly required to maintain the stress-timed rhythm of the sentence.
Yeah.
If you forcefully say, I do not like it, you are forced to put heavy rhythmic stress on do and not. You end up sounding either aggressive, angry, or robotic.
But collapsing the grammar glue into I don't like it allows the flow to remain perfectly intact, letting the verb like be the star of the sentence.
And finally, grammar tells you exactly how to map your intonation, the actual up and down pitch of your vocal cords.
Right, the melody.
There are two primary intonation maps driven directly by grammar. The first is the staircase, which goes down in pitch at the end. You use this for basic statements and why questions, so who, what, where, when, why.
I want to try this. So a statement is, I live in London. The pitch drops on London. And for a question, where do you live? The pitch drops at the end there too. It feels like it signals authority or certainty.
It does. Many learners mistakenly raise their pitch at the end of a where or why question, just because there is a question mark at the end of the sentence, like where do you live? But raising the pitch there makes you sound unsure, confused, or overly emotional. You have to drop the pitch. Own the question.
But you do raise the pitch for yes or no questions, right?
Yeah.
That's the second map, the slide up. Do you live in London? Are you hungry? That upward slide at the end signals openness.
It is the musical equivalent of holding the door open and inviting the other person to answer.
By practicing a single sentence with different intonations, like shifting it from a flat statement of fact to a rising question of surprise, to an aggressive downward contradiction, you realize that grammar isn't just words on a page. It literally bends to your emotional will through the mechanics of your pronunciation.
It really does.
So let's sort of bring this all together. We started with the frustrating A1 reality of having dictionary perfect words that still just result in blank stares.
Right.
And we've walked through the A2 mechanics of flow. We talked about breaking the acoustic filter with hyper-focused listening, doing actual physical mouth gymnastics to build new muscle memory, using reading and writing to map the cognitive load, and finally using the schwa and grammar to create a seamless musical melody.
And the core takeaway to remember here is that the goal isn't to sound like a perfectly polished news anchor. The goal is just to make your unique individual voice perfectly understood by the person standing in front of you. This raises an important question, though. Grammar provides the sheet music, but pronunciation is your personal, physical performance. Are you willing to embrace the awkward faces, the aching jaw, and the exaggeration required in practice to finally master that performance?
It is a massive physical and mental workout, which actually leaves me with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to ponder today.
Oh, let's hear it.
If speaking English clearly requires training entirely new physical muscle pathways in your face, adopting entirely new bouncing rhythms, and expressing your emotions through entirely different pitch melodies, when you finally do master this new music of the language, does it actually shift a little piece of your personality when you speak it?
You know, there is actually a documented phenomenon where bilingual individuals report feeling like a slightly different person or having a different persona depending on which language they are speaking. Yeah, the physical posture, the breath control, the pitch, it all contributes to a different psychological state. So mastering these mechanics might not just change how people hear you, it might subtly change how you feel about yourself.
That is incredible. A new rhythm, a new you. Keep listening to the music. Keep practicing those louds and quiets. Embrace the aching jaw, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.